Ready to take your favorite WagerTalk handicappers wherever you travel this football season? The WagerTalk TV app is now live for phones, tablets, smart TVs, and streaming platforms. Tune into your favorite shows like WagerTalk Today, Bet on It, and the Opening Line Report. Plus, browse through our extensive library of sports betting tips. Create your personal playlist of betting tip videos to help you prepare for the upcoming season, and set notifications to alert you when new content is added. Download the app for Apple, Android, Amazon, and Roku devices by searching for WagerTalk TV, or scan the QR code on your screen to join the winning conversation today.
Welcome, everyone, to Inside the Distance. I am Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com. We are here to break down UFC 281, Adesanya versus Pereira. Joining me, as always, my fellow UFC and MMA experts, Matt Kowalis from SportsMemo.com, Kyle Anthony from WagerTalk.com. We got a lot going here this card. We have several championship fights. We have early prelims. We have prelims. We're going to break down the main event for everyone. Then we're going to take a look at some fights to watch. We're going to end the show with our Parlay Buster, our fight to go the distance, and our heads up or money line fight. So, gentlemen, as we always say, we cannot predict the future if we don't learn from the past. So let's go to the classroom and take a look at what did we learn from the last event. Kyle Anthony, coming to you. What did you learn from UFC Fight Night at the last event?
Well, I learned that Amanda Lemos is legit. Now, I was all over Marina Rodriguez. I thought she was really going to work the boxing, stay at range, be protected, not really allow Lemos has very low volume, and I thought the volume from Marina would be enough, but it really came down to the fact that Lemos can crack. I mean, and we kind of knew that, but we didn't really. It was almost like it was implied, but can she really do it? And now we're seeing that, she can really cause problems for whoever ends up being the champion. I think that her strength in the clinch is really impressive as well, too. And, it was the cardio. I really liked Marina because I felt like she was built for 5 rounds, that she was really starting to pick up the pace and really getting into like the momentum side of things. But I was really impressed by Amanda. I was way off of it. Some people were talking about the knockout. I did really like the knockout at all there too. I really thought 5 rounds plus money at plus 150 was a nice spot for Marina. But I give Amanda a lot of credit. I think she can give problems to whoever ends up with the belt, and I think that she can really get the job done possibly out there.
All right, early stoppage, Kyle. Was that early? Just a little early? Maybe in the main event you got to land at least a couple more shots?
Well, but if she went in there, I do agree with that. But if she went in there and threw another bomb, I think the fight was over. But I agree, though, the stumbling on a fight like that, it probably should. A main event, it probably should have kept going. I agree.
I thought it was a little early. So, Matt, what did you learn from the last event?
Yeah, so for me in the last event, I learned do not doubt these UFC vets. After watching Beneil Dariush take down Mateusz Gamrot and Bilal Muhammad beat Sean Brady, I kind of had to pump the brakes on taking some of these younger fighters who are exciting, powerful, quickly ranking up the division. Because last week, I ended up taking Neil Magny over D-Rod. And don't get me wrong, I love D-Rod. He's an exciting fighter, up-and-comer. He gets the crowd going. But a lot of these guys who have been considered gatekeepers have been shutting the door on that gate as of late. So for me, that's one thing that I learned is when it comes to these UFC veterans who are higher up in the rankings, but still considered kind of gatekeeper, maybe start taking those guys, because some of these other guys who they're matched up against don't have the experience. And it really does seem like the experience of these fighters who've been around the block a couple times is really paying off in these matchups. So that's one thing that I definitely learned.
I learned you can kind of see maybe in weigh-ins or some of the interviews or just the overall matchup, just bet against the guys that are just happy to be there. We talked about Mario Batista fighting Benito Lopez, the realtor, and Lopez was just happy to be there and get the paycheck, and nobody's gonna bang on him for that. But that ended up being just an obvious play. Bautista, put him in your parlays, take the money line, take the finish. I mean, Lopez missed weight. Bautista had the body of a UFC fighter. Lopez had the body of a realtor, and it was just we've seen these like these last second fighters that are happy to be here or other things. And I bring this up because I think there could be maybe a touch of Frankie Edgar is just happy to be here for his retirement fight. Get one last big payday on the way out. Why not? That fight is a little bit curious. I'm not sure if he's going to be too excited to take a lot of leg kicks from Chris Gutierrez on his retirement fight on his last paycheck out. So moving forward, I'm looking for these guys that are just happy to be there to collect a paycheck, going up against guys who are a lot more motivated to get the win and move up. So that is what we learned at the last event. Gentlemen, let's just jump right into the main event, man. It's it's one that UFC is pretty much handpicked. I mean, let's face it. I think, what is it, 371 days Alex Pereira's been in the UFC. He's got a title fight. Hey, congrats to him. He took care of business, and UFC gets their dream matchup. So, Matt, you get honors. Talk to us. Adesanya and Pereira. It's going to be an awesome fight to watch, hopefully. What do you expect?
Yeah, this is one that I'm really excited for because – on paper, this is the most even matchup you'll probably ever see for Israel Adesanya. Now, Adesanya 6'3", 80-inch reach. Pereira 6'3", 79-inch reach. And, these two fighters have history. They have fought back in the day in terms of kickboxing and things like that. There's bad blood in this matchup. Adesanya has lost twice to Pereira in his career, and when you go back and look at those fights, I'll be honest, I went back and watched both fights. The first fight, I thought Adesanya did win by a decision. Pereira ended up getting that edge in the decision in that matchup. And it was one of those where when the refs or when the judges came out with the scorecard, Adesanya was shocked and Pereira was just as shocked that he won. And then in the second fight, another thing that I want to add is they were fighting in Brazil. Adesanya actually clipped Pereira to the point where he actually got an 8 count on the ground. In the UFC, that doesn't really work, and in those fights, I did feel like Israel Adesanya had the edge over Pereira. But one thing I will say is with Adesanya being a -210 favorite, I think that's way too high in this matchup. I think this is far more of an even matchup. I jumped on this line 2 weeks ago when it was at -160. But for this fight, I know a lot of people are really, really excited for it. I honestly think it could be a snooze fest. I really do. When I look at Israel Adesanya, there's some things that he does very, very well. And it's limiting damage and keeping the distance. And there's not going to be a fighter, or this is probably the most dangerous fighter he has faced throughout his entire career. He's been knocked out by him in the past. So I think this fight might go, I think it might have a pace like a Yoel Romero fight when Adesanya faced him. And I'm hoping it's a lot faster than that. But I think Izzy is going to piece up Pereira. I think he's going to push the pace for sure. He's the stronger fighter. But the way that Izzy mixes in his striking, the leg kicks, the low leg kicks, the high leg kicks, Pereira in the past, he's been taking down all of these UFC guys very quickly. But against Bruno Silva, if you go back and watch that fight, that was a 3-round fight. And although Pereira won 30-27, Bruno Silva had a pretty good fight, and he did land a good amount of strikes on Alex Pereira, some of them including head kicks and other kicks of variety. So that's why I still like Adesanya here. He mixes up the striking so well once again. And this is one of those fights where, when you lose twice to someone, it's going to be on your mind for a long time. Every single time Israel Adesanya had a win in the UFC, Pereira was posting on Twitter and Instagram saying, I knocked this guy out. I knocked this guy out. Every single fight. So both of these guys have been waiting for this matchup once again. And in this spot, with this being the first fight, because I actually do think there will be multiple fights here, I am taking Izzy. I'm going to back Izzy here. I would lay the -200, even though I did take it a couple weeks earlier. I just think he's too technical. He's too experienced in mixed martial arts when Pereira, again, is newer. He's very successful in it, but still newer. And Izzy is just a different level. And time again, he's proven that there's different levels to this. So I'm with Izzy here.
Kyle, Adesanya, Pereira, what do you got for us? Matt brings up a good point. It could be in his head. Pereira could absolutely be in Izzy's head. That being said, Izzy has the longer career in MMA. How do you see this fight turning out?
Yeah, Matt brings up a lot of good points. I'll definitely give him that. But I look at this fight, and the biggest thing that I see that, and touching on his point, is the stature. This is the first time for Izzy since he's been in the UFC that he has faced anyone with similar reach, similar height, all of these things. Now, if you look back at some of the fights that he had, you look at Robert Whittaker, who had a 7-inch disadvantage. You've got Kelvin Gastelum, who had a 9-inch disadvantage. These guys were landing on Adesanya. Now, yes, he won. Yes, there were some close rounds or whatever it is, and he did what he needed to do. But these little combinations and drawbacks are going to actually be very difficult for Adesanya in certain spots where he's not going to have this big reach advantage. He's not going to have the luxury of kind of sitting in that certain spot, being comfortable at range, working at range. He's going to have to do that. I think the way his path is to point fight. That's absolutely the way that I think that he has to go. He has to work the leg kicks. He has to jab. He was kind of joking a little bit about some of that, where he said, "Hey, you know what? This is actually, I don't mind if I need to jab. I don't know if I can stay on the outside. That's fine." I think the other way, Pereira needs to push forward. Pereira needs to smother the kicker. He needs to keep Adesanya on his back foot. He needs to force him in uncomfortable positions because both of these guys are kickboxers. They're going to be at range. Of course, that's what they want to do. But I think this is a spot where if any grappling does happen, it's going to come from the Pereira side. He's got Glover in his corner. I think that helps him with Teixeira in his corner with the experience. I'm not saying he's diving at legs for 5 rounds, but it's a good pace change. I think it's a good getting Izzy out of rhythm. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out. The experience is on Izzy's side. He has massive, obviously, MMA when it comes to experience there. But I do lean on the Pereira side. I think the power advantage is on his side. I think the number at this point makes you want to take Pereira on this side also. And the knockout at plus 270 is not a bad sprinkle either. But I do think this is a very tough matchup for him because it's going to be a glorified kickboxing match. And to your point, yes, he got knocked out. That was a short notice fight. Actually, when he knocked out Izzy, he came in on short notice and beat him. So there are different parts to that, especially with the points. Izzy probably won the first one. So there's a lot going on in here, but I think Pereira and the similar reach is going to be a big problem for Adesanya come Saturday night.
Great stuff from Matt from sportsmemo.com, Kyle, WagerTalk.com. I don't have a whole lot to add to that, guys. I think you guys broke down the styles pretty good. I think the value is on Pereira, and I love the knockout there, Kyle, like what you said. I find it hard to believe Pereira would win a 5-rounder. But if he does press forward, right. He does have the power. He does have the power and the reach to cause some damage. So I'm just hoping for an exciting fight. Just please give us entertaining fight. Give us. All right, gentlemen, let's take a look. I know. That's what scares me. Let's take a look at our fights to watch. We each picked a fight that we're pretty excited to watch. Could be a good betting angle. Could be a good stylistic matchup. Kyle, I'm going to come to you first. You were first to chime in with your fight you're excited to watch. And, yeah, you took the banger. So talk to us about which fight you're excited to watch.
Chris Gutierrez versus Frankie Edgar. Now, the reason why that I am leaning on that side is just because Frankie is just a legend. I mean, he's a Jersey boy. He has the Gray Maynard fights way back in the day were absolutely fantastic. Just seeing what he's done for the sport, done for, a lot of the guys that kind of followed him that were, kind of riding his coattails, kind of learning under him. And I just think it's an interesting I will be in the building. I will be there. I'm excited to be there. So it's one of the fights that Frankie, it's just, I got that Jersey thing. I want to see him go out there and get the job done. Now, we're talking about how this fight will go, and I think that there's actually we've seen Gutierrez really get taken down, and I think that Frankie is going to be diving at legs all fight. And we've seen once Gutierrez gets down, he can be held down. He's been held down by lesser wrestlers. I think that there's a spot here. I mean, it's a plus 190. It's a good number here. I think that this is a spot for him. Gutierrez is good. I don't put him that high. And to your point, Andy, the leg kicks are going to be dangerous. They're going to be dangerous. He's going to be chopping away at Frankie's legs right away out the gate. And I think that's definitely going to be a problem, but I think that's going to force him to be diving even more. But I'm just interested to see if Frankie can go out on a win and pull a victory out. So it's one I'm looking for. There's so many great fights on here, but this one, it's a Jersey thing. It's a Jersey thing.
Gotcha. That is Kyle's fight. He's excited to watch. I'm excited for the very first fight of the night. I'm looking at Olberg and Negumereanu. I think this was just going to be an absolute banger. I don't blink in this one. Both guys with only one loss, and each guy, their loss was in their UFC debut. Nikolai has won 4 in a row. Olberg's 2 in a run. So Negumereanu decision win against Nchekwu when Kennedy had a point taken away, and then he just KO'd Pereira when he's wore him down and KO'd him in the second round. Terry just horrible cardio and completely gassed himself. The issue with Nikolai is he leaves himself way too open to get hit at times, especially when you get out of the first round. He's looking to brawl. He's looking to get into these heavy exchanges, and he will eat a punch to give one. But he also can get into these boring stretches of his matches where he pushes opponents up against the cage, works body control. I think it's probably just to try and save some of his energy. But Olberg, I've seen a lot of improvement from Olberg, especially from his first fight. He went way too hard, way too early, completely gassed himself and got KO'd. But he learned his lesson, managed his cardio much better against Charant, won an easy 30-27 decision. And he was fresh in the third round in that one. And then he KOs Nchekwu with a just incredible, it was almost like a jab cross, vicious punch in the first round. I think the first fight of the night is just going to be fireworks. If these guys get into a brawl, it's going to be lights out for somebody. I do not think this fight goes the distance. I think someone gets put to sleep. I think it's the first fight of the night for a reason. I expect fireworks, and I really am excited to see how Olberg looks because he's one of these guys that got into MMA like really late into just his life, and he's been training with Izzy and training with all kinds of guys, and he's just a pure raw talent. So I'm excited to watch Olberg. I'm actually kind of rooting for him, but it's going to be an exciting fight. I expect it to end in a KO. Matt, coming to you, what fight are you excited to watch?
So for me, I'm excited to watch Carla Esparza and Zhang Weili, and for one, I think this is a very interesting fight stylistically. It's primarily a wrestler versus a striker. Well, Zhang's a little all over, and I'm also excited to see the progression of Zhang. And in this fight, Carla Esparza is a takedown and grappling specialist, averaging 3.25 takedowns per bout, and she's now won 6 fights in a row, 3 of those fights by split decision. And her last fight coming up against Rose Namajunas, potentially the most boring fight all time, and they should have paid me to watch that one. So I think people are looking for Weili to knock out Carla Esparza here. I'm going to be honest with that one. With that being said, though, I do think Esparza puts her foot down on the pedal a little more just because of how brutal the last fight was with Rose. There was a lot of talk about that. The media was getting behind it. The fans, they were getting booed. So I would think she tries to come out and be a little more aggressive, and I don't think that works to her advantage. Weili is, in my eyes, the most impressive strawweight throughout the division, averaging 5.78 strikes per minute and, receiving 4.2 strikes per minute. But on the other hand, Carla Esparza doesn't really throw all that much. Don't expect Zhang Weili to get touched all that much. And then in addition to that, Weili is also someone who can go offensively with the takedowns, averaging around 2 takedowns per bout. And in the past, when Weili has gotten taken down, it's usually against fighters who aren't exactly takedown specialists, so they kind of catch her off guard. In this fight, I would imagine that she's been prepping for takedowns the entire camp, because that's what Carla Esparza does. That's her only hope in this fight, is to get her to the ground and get control time and attempt to smother her. Zhang Weili, however, has a 60% takedown defense, and I'm just all over Zhang Weili here. This line has already pushed up to -400, so there's not a ton of value here. But if you want to run the Zhang Weili decision, KO, TKO, you can definitely get some better odds doing that. But for me, I'm on Zhang Weili, and I definitely would love to see Esparza get that L.
Good stuff from Matt Kowalis, sportsmemo.com. If you want Matt's picks, just go to sportsmemo.com. Check him out. He'll have plays for UFC 281. Kyle has already got a 4% play up at WagerTalk.com for UFC 281. I will probably have one play. I don't have a whole lot that I'm super confident in this card, so I'll be taking it easy. So by all means, go check out Matt's plays. Go check out Kyle's plays for this one. All right, gentlemen, we're going to take a look at the Parlay Buster, our distance fight, and our heads up fight. I have given myself the Parlay Buster that I'm going to look at. This is a fight that I think a lot of people are going to put in their parlays, and I'm just a little bit worried about it. This card was a little bit different. I was looking at Aaron Blanchfield a little bit, and then I started to see some people on Twitter talking about Montel Jackson going in their parlays, and I thought that is a bad idea. So I'll talk about Montel Jackson and why I'm a little nervous about this one. So Montel Jackson, he lost to Johns in 2020. He beat a guy named Jesse Strader who should not have been in a UFC ring. It was pathetic to watch. And Montel Jackson did what he should have done, which was he KO'd the guy, but he didn't hurt him, which I thought was very professional on Montel Jackson's part. But he goes to decision against JP Bays, who is not very good at all. Bays has lost 3 in a row. And I just haven't been really impressed. Meanwhile, you look at Julio Arce, who he's going up against. He had a pretty good fight against Daniel Santos, and that went to decision, which he won. Before that, he lost to Song Yadong, there's no shame in that loss. And when I look at the tapes, I really like the striking of Arce a lot better than Montel Jackson. I think Montel Jackson is going to look for the takedowns and look for the wrestling. And if he gets it, it should be Montel Jackson. But don't be surprised if Julio Arce can stay away from him, especially in the first round. Work some really good striking. And if he can stuff the first takedown attempt or the second takedown attempt and really do some damage to Montel Jackson, don't be surprised if Jackson slows down and the ground game and the wrestling game is abandoned and Arce squeaks out a decision win. The odds are minus 200 now on Montel Jackson. No way I'm going to put any part of Montel Jackson into my parlays, as I think Arce is a live dog just based on the striking and the lack of good competition that I've seen Montel Jackson beat. So there you go, Parlay Buster. Be careful with Montel Jackson. Let's do our distance fight. Kyle, coming to you. Talk to us about a fight that you expect to go the distance or not to go the distance.
Yeah, this one here, I got Dominic Reyes versus Ryan Spann. I think this is actually a great spot here for the under. It's 1.5. It's basically a pick 'em at this point. And both of these guys, and we've talked about here on the show a couple times, that really when you're looking for unders, you're looking for two guys' willingness to go in and exchange, whether it's grappling, whether it's striking, you're looking for that. And then you're looking for defensive inefficiencies. And both of these guys pretty much have both. They check both of the marks because they're willing to scrap. And if you go in there and you see what they're going to do, I mean, Dominic Reyes was really kind of coming up in the division, undefeated, had a controversial loss to John Jones, lost to Yuri Prochazka, and had a loss to Blachowicz. So he's lost to some top level guys. He's definitely lost to some really good fighters. But on the other side here, Spann is the kind of guy, I mean, I have the stats over here. So since he has been on Dana White's Contender Series, he's had 9 fights. 6 of them ended in the first round. 1 of them ended in the second, and 2 of them went to a decision, and he's on a 4-fight streak of the fight ending in the first round. So he is same thing. He's not paid hourly. He's looking to go in there and exchange. And Dominic Reyes has big hands, heavy hands. He's not scared to go in there and exchange either. So both of these guys are going to go in there, and they're going to push forward. Now, do I think that Ryan Spann can seek a takedown and get that control? I don't really think so. I think that Dominic Reyes can keep it on the feet, and I think these guys are going to go at it in the first round, and I really think this number is off. I think that it should be a bigger number. I think it should be more around the minus 160 range, 150 range than it should be this. I think this really tees up very well, and also we're not really sure how and what Dominic Reyes is going to be like. He may actually, he got blasted out the last 2 times he was there in the cage. So he may actually, maybe his chin's gone. Maybe, who knows where he's at. So I think both of these guys are going to push forward. early. I think you're going to see a finish, and I think it's going to be one of those brutal knockouts on the card, and I'm excited to see it.
I love it. Love a fight that ends in violence. Let's get the under on Dominic Reyes and Ryan Spann. Matt, coming to you. Give us a heads up or money line that is minus 200 or better. Which one are you looking at?
Yeah, so in this matchup, I'm kind of doing what Kyle did last week, and I'm actually going with a plus money play for the minus 200 or less, because it is one of those cards where it is tougher to kind of pick between those low or even money guys, stuff like that. I'm more so in the minus 200 range with maybe the Poirier or the Adesanya. But for this one, it's more the fact that I can't get behind a minus 175 Dan Hooker, who has lost 3 of his last 4 fights, twice getting knocked out and getting submitted once. You know, in this matchup, I do believe that Dan Hooker is the better striker. And, you know, many people are talking about how Kowalis has very little striking and isn't that good of a striker and more so of a grappler, submission artist, things of that nature. But for me, when watching those fights back of Claudio, I actually somewhat enjoyed his striking. I think it's somewhat improved. I think he has a variety of kicks that he throws out there. And with Dan Hooker, you know, we have seen that he has gotten somewhat chinny in the past, especially after getting knocked out a couple times. I personally think a lot was taken out of him in that Dustin Poirier absolute war. And ever since then, I just haven't seen his chin be the same, so it's tough for me to get behind it. And on top of that, the strike line is 70.5 significant strikes for Dan Hooker, 56.5 for Claudio. So again, it's a little closer than I thought. And with Claudio, he's one of those guys who he can do a little bit of everything. And he actually reminds me a little bit of Charles Oliveira with his way that he's not the best at getting takedowns, but he's very good at finding ways to get a limb, to get someone in a submission attempt or get someone in a bad position without even taking them down. And for Dan Hooker, I just think he's a little lost right now. He really, really needs this fight, so I do understand why some people would back him. But again, going back to Kowalis, he is from Peru, and he works for the UFC in a very small niche market. He also does the announcing for the UFC and UFC Espanol. And going back to some points that I've had on the show before, you know, they want to grow these foreign markets. They want to grow these. So, you know, the UFC grows in turn. It's a worldwide sport. And I just don't believe that they would throw Claudio into a fight with Dan Hooker if it was going to be a layup for Dan Hooker. I think they definitely like Claudio's chance in this fight, and I do as well. So I'm going to ride with Claudio Kowalis at plus 136 over Dan Hooker.
Love it. Giving out an underdog on our money line and heads up. Let's recap the Parlay Buster, our distance fight, and our heads up. For the Parlay Buster, I am just a little bit too worried about Montel Jackson being a minus 200 favorite and people putting him in their parlays. Kyle likes the Reyes and Ryan Spann fight to go under, and Matt likes Claudio Puelles as the underdog to get the win over the chinny Dan Hooker, as he put it. Chinny's. That's putting it lightly. Recently, there, Matt. It's very respectful by you.
Yeah, respectful.
Very, very respectful. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for us on Inside the Distance. Go check out Matt Kowalis on sportsmemo.com, Kyle Anthony on WagerTalk.com. I'm Andy Lang on WagerTalk.com. Let's hope we have a great card. Let's have a profitable one. Let's hope the Izzy and Pereira fight ends up being really, really watchable and we're not bored out of our minds by the end. But overall, let's make it a profitable one. Thanks for joining, guys. We'll see you next week on Inside the Distance.
Ready to take your favorite WagerTalk handicappers wherever you travel this football season? The WagerTalk TV app is now live for phones, tablets, smart TVs, and streaming platforms. Tune into your favorite shows like WagerTalk Today, Bet On It, and the Opening Line Report. Plus, browse through our extensive library of sports betting tips. Create your personal playlist of betting tip videos to help you prepare for the upcoming season, and set notifications to alert you when new content is added. Download the app for Apple, Android, Amazon, and Roku devices by searching for WagerTalk TV, or scan the QR code on your screen to join the winning conversation today.